Welcome to the second episode of the Awaken Life podcast. We are so excited that you're here, and we are going to share what we offered on day 2 of the 5-day immersion that we offered inside of our Yaks Yoga Lab Facebook group.
So what we're going to dive into is how yoga is so much more than poses, and how these simple movements set us up for so much more.
Now, if you take yoga back far enough, what the movements actually did was way beyond what most people think they do now. And the purpose of it was way deeper. And so that's what we're going to share with you today.
We're excited. Let's jump on over. So, 5-day yoga immersion. Yesterday was day 1. Chris rocked it out, talked about some good stuff. So the yoga immersion, what we're revealing is the untold secrets of yoga and why these truths are the key to reclaiming lost youth, eliminating stress and overwhelm, and finding self-love both on and off the mat. Chris talked yesterday about being and becoming. That was really one of the major pieces of that. And then through this idea of being becoming, there are tools that we use in order to get us clear on our beingness and get us clear on our becomingness. And that he talked about how they seem at odds with each other. And in actuality, when we approach them using these tools, that they actually complement each other. And then they're actually important that we understand the beingness in order to create the becomingness. The 3 tools he talked about were how the access points. Another way of saying that is through the body, the mind, and the heart. The body, the mind, and the heart. And what we are teaching you guys is what we call the Awaken Life formula, which we address these parts. We address these parts through specifics, and this is what we're unfolding for you. So day 2, what we're going to be talking about today, yoga is more than poses. How these simple movements set us up for so much more. Movement is the first pillar. So there are 3 pillars that address the body, mind, heart. The first pillar is movement. The more fluid you are, the more you are alive. This is Desjardins. I probably destroyed that name, so I apologize, Mr. A or Mrs. A. Desjardins. The movement. The more fluid you are, the more you are alive. Right? Fluidity in the body is vital in order for us to basically understand why we do what we do on our mats. Right? So this encompasses really what we're going to talk about. The more fluid you are, the more you are alive. So, day 2, yoga is more than poses. Movement. What we do on our mats has 2 true purposes. 2 true purposes. The first one is about the body. Right? This first purpose is all about our physicalness, our body. How do we approach and address the body? The approach that we take on our mats, what we do on our mats, is to reclaim lost youth. The reason we do what we do on our mats is to reclaim lost youth. So a few weeks ago, it feels like a few weeks ago, this is like a couple months ago now. So in the beginning of March, Chris and I were in Costa Rica. We did a retreat. Some of you were there on the retreat. It was awesome. A week before the retreat, we went to take a little surfing time, to have a little prep time. Right? Now, one day we realized that we had to do this trip because the waves were going to be really good. This trip was intense, meaning we got up at about 4:30 in the morning. We drove about 2 hours to the entrance of the Santa Rosa National Park. And once you get into the park, it is, you basically have to 4-wheel drive. It's like literally driving through a mountain. They call it a road, but that term is used loosely. You are literally driving down a mountain, 4-wheel drive, going through gullies, huge rocks, and you are going so slow because you're climbing the whole time. So it takes about an hour just to get to the beach. Now, once we got to where we parked, right in front of the beach, we get all our gear on. So we're both wearing 2 backpacks. We have our surfboards. We have everything. Start walking to the beach, and this guy, who I guess he was camping there, he's like, "Guys, there's no waves. There's a little wave out there, but the wind's going to be turning on it, and it's going to get really bad soon. It's done that every single day, and then the waves are just closing out." He's like, "It's not good." And we're like, "Okay." We knew the report. We knew that he didn't know what he was talking about. fingers crossed. So we walked down to the beach. Now, once we got to the beach, it was a 45-minute walk all the way down to the break. So we were at the beach, and then we start walking down the beach. 45 minutes to go all the way down to get to this, what's called Witch's Rock, right? This beautiful scenery, amazing. We get all the way down there, and the waves are fiery. The waves are good. It's going off. It's so good. And only a couple people in the water. So we set our camp out on the beach, put our stuff down, and we go surfing. And the waves are so good, guys, that we were like, we can't get out of the water. It's too good. We literally surf for like 2 hours, get out for like 20 minutes, eat some food, an apple, a granola bar, jump back out and surf again. Do another 2 hours and then come back in, eat a granola bar, a couple apples, and then go back out. We did this over and over again for 8 hours straight. For 8 hours straight. 20-minute break. Eat, go back out and surf. Eat, go back out and surf. It was so good. It was one of those moments, right? We finished the day of surfing. The sun's going down. We pack up all our gear, backpacks, all our stuff. Walk 45 minutes all the way back down to the entrance. We walk into the entrance and guess who we see? We see the same guy. The guy was like, what? What you guys were there the whole time? Who's your dad? Thor? And Chris and I were like, no, we do yoga. That encompasses this, right? It encompasses this idea of staying young, our ability to walk all the way down there, surf all day long, walk all the way back. It was because we practice. Now, I'm 43. Well, this is being filmed. I'm 43. Chris is 40. There are 20-year-olds that can't do that. This is the value of the practice, guys. No. So here's the thing. Yoga today focuses on performance and doing advanced poses. This is the biggest misnomer, right? The biggest miss of the power of this practice is that it's so focused around doing harder and harder poses, more advanced poses, as if doing these advanced poses is going to get you into this state of bliss, as if doing advanced poses is going to all of a sudden create the clarity in your life. It's going to all of a sudden create better relationships, as if me doing a press up into a handstand is all of a sudden going to have I'm going to have a better relationship with my wife because of it, right? But guys, this is what we thought when we first started practicing. Everything we saw, everything we were taught was like, no, just do more advanced poses. Get really good at your practice and get better and better and better. And what we realized is that we were getting injured all the time, right? We were trying to do this advanced stuff, and our wrists would get injured, our shoulders would get injured, and then we'd practice more and more and more. And what we also saw is we saw the OG yogis, the old gangster yogis, like the people that have been legitimately doing these physical practices for 30, 40, 50 years, 60 years. And their bodies were falling apart. Their bodies were falling apart. Like they were getting knee surgery and ankle surgeries. They were walking around with canes. Like the whole goal of what we're doing on our mats is not to do advanced poses, is not to get to an older age and have to get surgery because of your practice. Because of your practice, you're getting surgery. You're ruining your body because of your practice. The practice is not meant to do advanced poses. Now, don't get me wrong. Advanced poses are fun. You can do them as long as you understand the approach. This was highlighted. So Chris and I understood this, and we started like shifting how we practice and realizing that, and especially as we got a little older, we were like, no, I want to do this practice to support me, right? To support all the other things that I love in my life. There was a student of ours who went up, she moved to New York, and she ended up doing a teacher training in New York. She came back down 2 weeks before her graduation for her teacher training. And she pulled Chris aside and she was like, Chris, I need you to help me. He was like, all right. She was like, I'm doing my teacher training in New York and in order to graduate, I have to do Lotus. If you guys don't understand, you don't know what Lotus is, no worries. Lotus is you're sitting on your seat and you take this ankle and place it here. And then you take your other ankle and you place it here. She had to do that in order to graduate. That's an advanced pose, guys. What we're going to get into in a moment is there are a good portion of the population that cannot do Lotus. And it's not because they're tight. It's because their skeletal structure is such that they just won't without blowing out a knee. Right? So yeah, she could do it, and maybe her body was like that, and so she would do it, but she'd be rolling up to get her certificate in a wheelchair, right? Or on crutches. She'd be on crutches, like, thank you, got into Lotus one time in my life. So the whole idea here, guys, is what we do on our mats, we practice to stay young. We practice to keep doing the things that we love in our lives, not to be a gymnast, right? Not to do gymnastics. You don't see any 50, 40-year-old gymnasts doing gymnastics, right? We're not forcing ourselves into these positions to somehow think that we're going to have a better life when I'm able to do an advanced pose. Practice in order to stay young. Practice to keep your body feeling good. And if you want to play with advanced poses, do so following what I'm about to talk about now. Right? So, we're all the same and we're all different. We're all the same and we're all different. We're the same because we're all made of the same stuff. And what I mean by that is we all have myofascial lines. These myofascial lines are lines of connective tissue that the majority of them run from the bottom of the feet all the way to the top of the head. Every single person has them. All of us have them. How we approach our practice in order to stay young, to keep youth in our lives, to keep us fluid, right? Because the more fluid we are, the more alive we are. The way we practice in order to stay fluid is to address the body according to anatomy, according to these myofascial lines. We sequence every single practice that we do in a systematic way to sequentially open up these myofascial lines, or these lines of connective tissue in the body, moving from most superficial to the deepest lines. If you do this every single time you practice, you'll address the totality of the body, and you'll do it in a systematic way that allows you to keep fluidity and strength in the body. Because what does youth mean, right? What does it mean to stay young? And it means to maintain core strength and to maintain mobility, so that our bodies are fluid, right? Because fluid equals alive. Now, one of the biggest principles behind myofascial methodology, we find the methodology that we follow, myofascial methodology, is this idea that weakness precedes tightness. In yoga, you see it all the time, that the practice is about going as deep as you can and go as stretch as you can. If you watch Instagram for a minute, you're going to see somebody doing a crazy back bend where they're all the way back and the back of their head is touching their butt, or their hands are to the floor or something. They're like, oh, that's yoga. No, it's not all about flexibility. In fact, it's about strength first. Because if we're weak in one of these lines of connective tissue in the body, the other lines, this is the beauty of the body, right? This is beauty of nature. The other lines compensate for the weakness of that line, meaning they start to take over some of the movement function, the postural function of that line, right? And so it means they get tight. And so we get on our mats and we stretch and we move through the lines, we stretch. Don't stretch like that, right? But we stretch and we start to feel more open. But guess what happens? It only lasts for a little bit. And then those lines are like, whoa, hey, this line is weak, so let's do its job. So they get tight again. So in order to get out of that tightness, we have to strengthen that line. And this is why we approach the practice this way. Not only do we open these lines, but we strengthen these lines as well, so that the other lines can relax. They don't have to do the work of that other line. And then we can address the lines as we move through the practice, right? So weakness precedes tightness. We have to get strong first, and then we can open up the body, right? Then we can open up these lines of the body. This is how we're all the same. We all have these myofascial lines, all of us. How we're different is that stuff is put together in a unique way for us individually. So what I'm saying is that you are unique. There is not another person in this world that's made the same way you are. The structure of your skeletal system is different for every one of us. And this brings into the next principle that we want to talk about today, is tension versus compression. Tension versus compression is this idea that when you're opening up the body, you're moving through a joint, basically. And so the elbow, I think, is one of the easiest ways to see this. So tension is when I'm moving my arm this way, right? So I'm stretching this part of my arm. In the beginning, right, you just started your yoga practice. This could be tight for me, right? And so as I do this motion, this opens up and opens up and opens up. And in the yoga practice, You imagine this joint is all our joints. This feels amazing, right? Like, oh my God, that feels so good. It feels so good. And then off the mat, oh, it feels so good. And then I get back onto my mat and practice, and it feels incredible and feels incredible. And then it keeps feeling incredible, incredible, incredible. And then I get to a point of like, it still feels really good, but I don't feel like I'm getting any farther. Because we actually see and feel the progression here, right? I notice my arm getting straighter and straighter and straighter, and it feels amazing. At some point, if I follow that same idea, I should be able to stretch this more and more and still feel amazing. And all of a sudden, my arm will be going down here or down here, and I'll be able to like swing it around, right? So at some point, not understanding what compression is can create this high level, this risk of injury. This is making sense? But so this idea, so as I move my arm in this direction, at some point, not understanding compression will make me think that I need to force this straighter and straighter and straighter. At some point, this connective tissue will be open. There will be no more tension here. And at that point, I hit compression. Bone on the elbow. A lot of times it's bone on soft tissue on bone, but compression here. And what that compression is the inability for the bones to go, like, I'm there, I'm at my limit. Not understanding compression makes me think that I can go deeper. And so I push myself to go deeper. But I'm not actually opening up this anymore. I'm doing damage to this. A little compression is okay if we understand what compression is. But the fact of the matter is that then when people come into yoga, and yoga's gotten so big, if we don't understand it, so many people don't understand compression, and they think, well, I just need to go deeper. And so they force themselves going deeper and deeper and deeper. They end up injuring the joints. Guys, this comes as, I was using the elbow as an example because it's simple, it's easier to see, but this plays out in my wrists, obviously my elbows, my shoulders, the whole spinal column, my neck, my low back, my hips, my knees, my ankles. Every joint of the body does this, right? Every joint of the body has this relationship. At some point, if you practice long enough, there won't be any more tension, or there'll be a lot less tension, and you'll start to hit compressive points. If we understand where that compressive point is, we'll be able to practice safely and for as long as we want to, right? We won't be like some of the old yogis now that are in their 70s, 80s and getting surgery and walking around with canes. We will stay young, fluid, and alive. Right? We won't injure ourselves through this practice. If we're doing yoga, trying to do more advanced poses, we'll end up chasing something that won't give us what we're looking for. And this is this idea. If we follow myofascial methodology, we understand tension versus compression, we allow ourselves to create a sustainable practice that allows us to do the things we love to do for the rest of our lives. Continue to dance, continue to do martial arts, continue to walk in nature, continue to swim, continue to ride horses, do whatever it is that your passion is. The yoga practice is made to support that, to keep that youth in our lives until the day we die, right? For our entire lives. This is making sense? Okay, so this is how we're the same. This is how we're different. The next purpose of the practice, so that was purpose 1, is to maintain youth in our bodies. Purpose 2 is for the mind, specifically heightened awareness. Movement is the unifying bond between the mind and the body, and sensations are the substance of that bond. Movement is the unifying bond between the mind and the body, and the sensations are the substance of that bond. You all know this experience. You've had it. This is what keeps you stuck. It's stuck in a good way, right? This is what keeps you stuck in the yoga practice release loop. Right? When we get on our mats and we feel amazing, we get off our mats. You've had the experience of having something gripping your mind. You're just like, oh, something so intense in life. And you're like, all right, I'm going to go to my yoga practice. This is you're thinking about. You get on your mats and you start moving and you start breathing. You start moving and you start breathing. You start moving, you start breathing, and all of a sudden it gets lighter and lighter and lighter. And all of a sudden it's gone and you're just focused and you're here in the moment and you're moving and you're breathing, you're moving and you're breathing for that 60 minutes, the 75 minutes, the 90 minutes, however long the practice is. And then you get off your mat and you walk out, you're like, ah. And if it's there, it's so much lighter, right? If that problem is still in your mind, it's so much lighter. Or this has happened, I'm sure this happened to you. You had an insight. when that was no longer gripping and heavy on your mind, all of a sudden you had an insight. The solution, or like, oh, I could just do that. This is the power of the practice as far as the mind goes. So getting on our mats and moving the body creates heightened awareness. It creates this experience of being present with life in the moment and not gripped by the craziness of the mind. Right? It helps release that. But what we're saying here is that we get stuck in that yoga practice release loop, and we're like, well, I got to get back to get that same feeling. Guys, in the beginning, yoga was not asana. And so when I say asana, I mean postures, like the poses, right? Asanas. It's Sanskrit. Very scholarly. It's the poses, the postures that we do asana, right? But in the beginning, asana it wasn't as we know it today, right? The oldest text was from the 15th century. It was called the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. It was written in the 15th century. The oldest text known about the asana practice. And in that book, it only talked about 14 poses. And this is the kicker, right? Here's the crazy part. 11 of the 14 poses were seated meditation poses. 11 of them were seated poses. Right? So even that far back, even the first text that was ever written about any physical practices was mostly meditation practices. What I'm saying to you guys is, in the beginning, the physical practices were a preparation for something bigger. Right? So the practices that we know were really developed in the late 1800s. Right? So late 1800s was when modern day yoga started to take shape. And the crazy part is it had a heavy, heavy influence from from England, right? India was a colony of England at one point, and they brought gymnastics into the country. And some of these early yogis saw gymnastics and incorporated that into the physical practice, right? So 1800s was when that started to take shape. And so what I'm saying here, guys, is the physical practice that we know it. What's expounded by so many yogis out in the world is that when you're doing these up dogs and down dogs and all this physical practice, it was what these ancient yogis thousands of years ago were doing. And it's not true. Right? What they were doing, the Patanjali's Yoga Sutra has talked about asana as far as just taking a seat. Right? Some of the earliest known texts, when they talked about asana, it was all about taking a seat. Because originally poses were the prep for meditation. The original poses were simply a seat for meditation. And even fast forward up to the 15th century in Hatha Yoga Pradipika, it was developed. The other few poses were developed in order to take a seat. Later on in the late 1800s, when this practice that we know it, when we come into a yoga studio that we feel, right? That was developed in order to take a seat. The second pillar is meditation. This is how we take that experience we feel on the mat and the high we get for hours after we practice. This is how we take that high, bring it off the mat into our lives. Master the mind, or the mind will master you. Master the mind, or the mind will master you. Chris tomorrow is going to deep dive into this. He's going to deep dive into meditation. He's going to talk about how and why we need to establish meditation practice. He's going to talk about why it is so vital to be able to pull this experience that we feel so amazing on the mat and how we feel afterwards, to be able to pull that, to have a vehicle to be able to create that same experience anytime we want to, off the mat, to get into that same space. So that's all I got. Homework. Whoa, don't forget, we have homework. Homework tonight, journal writing. The journal writing is going to be, and we'll send this out to you guys. So the journal writing is going to be, what does your best life look like? What does your best life look like? What we always tell people, we're working with people, we're doing group coaching or private coaching, what was it? Dream big and dream specific, especially for this part. Right? Don't be vague with it. Dream big. What does the vision of your best life look like? and then dream specific. Get very, very, very detailed, guys. Because if we don't get detailed, the universe will fill in the gaps. We'll get into that later. So, homework. What does your best life look like? And dream big, dream specific. Post it in the group, right? Drop it into the group if you feel comfortable enough with it. I also want to say thank you all so much for dropping the last homework into your groups. So you're like brave souls. Right? So just seeing the courage was like, it brings tears to my eyes. It's awesome. So keep that up. So what I'm saying is, if you feel comfortable enough, drop this one. This one actually may be easier to drop into than the last homework, but drop it into the group. Yeah, that's it. Drop it over to the group. And guys, thank you so much for joining us, for taking this journey with us. So incredible. We are honored that you're here. Yes, that's it. Thank you all. Peace.